Buon pomeriggio a tutti, amici del Lago Film Festival. Siamo qui con la regista Julieta Duchovny, la regista di Fático, un film della categoria Principi Award. Potete vedere il suo film al festival oppure trovare anche la proiezione online. L'intervista adesso sarà condotta in inglese e potete trovare anche inoltre più informazioni sul sito e sui nostri canali social. Hi Julieta.
Hi Emma, how are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, your movie is so particular. I mean, there's no dialogue involved. There is some spoken word, but it's not um, enough interesting, I guess, to really subtitle it. So thank you, because I am doing the subtitles, and this movie is one movie less that I have to subtitle. But the language of your movie is very interesting. Would you like to talk about this approach that you have?
Yeah, sure. So when I came up with the idea for the film, I had just recently watched Playtime by Tati. And when I first, so we didn't take any direct sound when we were shooting the film. So it was all done in post. But we first edited it, and I wanted to send it to like festivals and like that kind of thing. So I edited it myself, not with the sound editor. So I actually took pieces from Playtime and I put them in, and that's kind of how later we constructed those sort of dialogues in which we're talking. We're pretending like we talk Italian, and then a little bit of French, and then a little bit of Spanish, and then we kind of mixed it all together. And so yeah, basically that was the inspiration.
Yeah, so both visually and with the sound design, you got inspiration from Tati. But yeah, the imagery is so beautiful, especially the girls playing tennis. One thing that I've noticed is basically the female presence in the movie is throughout the whole movie. Yeah, I think you see some boys at the beginning playing tennis, but other than that, it's just female. Do you have a meaning behind it?
I was talking with a professor yesterday who said if a writer or any type of author or artist wants to give meaning to something, it doesn't really matter. So that, like, the meaning that I wanted to put into it maybe doesn't come through. But the thing is, the film is based very much so on my memories from my childhood. So the female influence kind of represents different stages of my life and the women in my life. So I was inspired very strongly by all the women in my life, like my sister. I'm actually the girl who plays the woman on the third scene is my sister, and so yeah.
Okay. Are you working on something at the moment? Do you have future projects?
We're working on two things. So I always work in tandem with the producer who produced this short, who is my friend and colleague Catalina Ward. And on one hand, I have been shooting a documentary for like 3 years, and I think I'm finally done with the filming. So we're gonna start. I edited like a rough cut, but it's really hard to edit. Just editing documentary footage is very, very hard to do, and even more so when it's a personal thing. So I edited a rough cut just to see where I wanted to go with it and all this material, because it's hours and hours of material and footage. So we're gonna start editing that now, also with the editor who edited Fático, and then I actually have like a feature film that we're kind of starting to produce and do the pre-production on it. So it's also kind of based off of the documentary. So scenes that I shot for the documentary that I think I'm not going to make it into the cut because they don't fit in with the other scenes. I wanted to do something with those, so I actually like wrote them down, and from that and from characters from other script, like it's how scripts sometimes are very Frankenstein, and sometimes you just grab something from before and from there and from a documentary, and from that and there's kind of this film we're trying to to get financial help to do, because it's really hard. So yeah.
Well, it's so interesting. I mean, I see such a thin line between documentary and fiction. I mean, it's rare nowadays that I meet people and they really have a fixed fictional script. I don't know. I see that it's something that is really common between younger generation. Do you really like feel this hybrid thing, or would you like to focus more on fiction? But I mean, I guess your school is also promoting big fictional films and features, or do they have instead the opposite approach?
For I mean, with Fático, they kind of encourage the students to film something that is like like a very big production with the whole equipment and the camera, which doesn't really allow for much of a documentary approach. However, many of the professors at the school are independent filmmakers, and with independent filmmaking, I think there's usually this approach, like you can't help but sometimes you have actors who are your friends or your family, and it kind of helps you to take this documentary approach, and I think also the generational thing that we're kind of filming all the time. We have cameras in our hands all the time, and it becomes impossible to reproduce some of the things that you document with your everyday camera. So sometimes you just feel like you need to use those images, and I think that there's also this higher acceptance of different types of shooting material. So sometimes like something shot on a cell phone can be edited with something shot on like a DSLR camera. So I think that's interesting. And yeah, I do find that the documentary approach is something that I like better with the things that I'm doing now, like just going with my camera and maybe someone who's doing like recording sound, rather than this whole big production when you have these big cameras and this whole big lighting equipment, which requires a lot of people and a lot of planning and not much for improvisation and just seeing what's going on, seeing what the lighting suggests, or maybe thinking, okay, I wanted to shoot this way, but maybe the shot looks better this way, and it makes sense for me to edit this shot with this other shot, and just being able to think in the moment, which, I mean, it's hard, it's a different approach, but I personally like it better. I mean, yeah.
So nice. And can you tell us a little bit about the theme of your documentary? I'm so curious.
The what?
About the theme of your documentary.
So I started, it actually started out being about my father. So I filmed him and I chased him with my camera for like 2 years. And then I sort of like stopped for a while. And I had this professor tell me, who's a documentary filmmaker. He's really great. His name is Wilman. So he was like, you should carry on with that. You should go forward with that. And I started filming. And it's like the week after I started filming that, something really big happened in my family. And suddenly this documentary that I had been filming for 2 years, which had like an approach of me trying to understand my father, suddenly turned into like more of a family thing, but then also more of like an intimate thing about myself. And you know how these days there's a lot of kind of self-fiction, is what we call it in Argentina. So I think it kind of is going that way, but it's it's mostly about my family, and that's why I say it's so hard to edit it, because it's so hard to be like, I don't know,
director,
like, but yeah, like
subject.
yeah.
Are you also in the film?
On the first 2 years, I tried to include myself in the shot, and then I mostly didn't. But then we're playing with texts on screen, which are like narrated from my point of view. And there's a few shots of me, I think. But then mostly what I don't like is when I hear my voice. So that's one of the scenes that I cut, which is I'm shooting, and for some reason I feel like I need to interact, and that's something that I really had to learn. Like, don't speak. Like, you want to speak because you want to make, I don't know, your characters to like say something or do something, but the best thing you can do, or in my case, maybe because I just don't like listening to my own voice, but it's just setting up the camera and staring, and maybe just which is something that I really like about documenting this, is that I have a really photographic view, and I'm studying to be a DOP, so it lets me really focus on the shot and in the lighting, and not have to worry about what they're saying. So I just set up the camera, set up the lighting, and then I wait, and I really like that. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time and this very interesting interview. We hope to somehow. We also have another documentary film festival called 3070 Doc Fest, so maybe your movie will be screened also for our audience. Grazie a tutti di essere stati qui con noi, appunto potremo forse vedere il film di Julieta in un futuro, e ci vediamo a Lago quest'estate.
Okay, thank you, Emma.